we wrapped, just over a month ago, and it's like we're picture locking, soft picture locking, I like to say, end of next week. And we'll have hopefully a working build for the most part to
That's
work
so good.
with as well, which is sort of, it's unheard of, on linear films, let alone interactive films.
Yeah, that's really great.
We've come a long way. We've definitely come a long way.
We've dived right in
Yeah.
before even talking about it, but I should probably do a formal intro so that we can top and tail this, because I think the idea of this is to catch up on. I mean, obviously we talked a lot about all sorts of things, but but we've had recorded chats in Cannes and DevCon Cologne and other times when
those were 2 years ago.
Yeah, a while ago, absolutely. And so actually, a lot of people I think still refer back to those and find those inspiring. And then because we're going to Adobe Max and it's a creativity conference, we thought that it would be useful to catch up and see where you're at. And so hello everybody, I'm Howe, CTO and co-founder of Stornaway, and this is the master Paul Raschid. And I'll let you introduce yourself, Paul, rather than me do a fluff job of it. But Paul's just as a quick précis, Paul's career in interactive filmmaking and making games out of beautiful video and film is legendary. And I thought maybe to give people a sense of it over the last few years, I thought maybe you could recap some of the titles that you have directed and written over the last few years.
Absolutely. Well, I don't think I could have done a better job introducing myself, Rue, but hi guys, I'm Paul Raschid, and I'm a screenwriter-director specializing in interactive films. My first interactive film was The Complex. After a major bioweapon attack in London, two scientists find themselves in a locked-down laboratory with time and air running out. The Complex was an official selection at the Brussels International Fantastic Film Festival. 5 Dates is an interactive rom-com about the unpredictable world of digital dating during the first COVID-19 pandemic lockdown. 5 Dates also received a BAFTA Cymru nomination in the feature film category. Death Trap Dungeon: The Golden Room is a fantasy thriller interactive short film based on Ian Livingstone's multi-million-selling classic game book. The Gallery is an interactive hostage thriller featuring 2 narratives set in 1981 with a female protagonist and 2021 with a male protagonist. An art curator is held hostage by a portraitist who threatens to detonate a bomb unless their demands are met. The Gallery was an official selection at the Dinar Film Festival and received a limited cinema release in the UK. And my most recent title was 10 Dates. 10 Dates is the sequel to the interactive rom-com 5 Dates. Misha, a millennial from London in search of that elusive in-person connection, tricks her best friend Ryan into going to a speed dating event with her. 10 Dates was nominated for 2 TIGA Gaming Awards. And then I've just wrapped on my latest film, which is as yet unannounced. But so I would say that's 6 interactive films, 5 of which features and 1 of which is a short. That's what I've been doing between 2019 and now, has just been exploring different genres and different formats within the interactive and just different mechanics on the game side of things, but also how we can push the format in the film world. Earlier this year with the Gallery, we try, and through film festival selections for the Gallery, we've had it screened in cinemas, using where the audience hand glow sticks, and every time a decision point happens, they raise their glow sticks to vote for the choice they want to see. And the first time we ever did that was trialed on Stornaway at a cinema. We played it off Stornaway, and people were voting, and that was where we saw that this was actually had legs as a format, the interactive film in cinemas. So that's something that we're working on, but also the next final frontier, which hopefully we're heading towards very swiftly with the help of Stornaway, is being able to open interactive films out to the world, in the sense of them making them as accessible as possible on all sorts of formats, platforms, whether they be streaming sites or whatever, what have embedded anywhere, interactive narratives. So that's kind of the journey I've been on since 2019, when the only real pathway for these things was gaming platforms. So before I waffle on anymore, that's just a little bit about where I started and I've come to.
That was very precise, very, very concise. I think Yeah, I mean, for anybody who's coming to this new, who's thinking interactive films, what, or that only has the reference point of Bandersnatch or I don't know, Bear Grylls, or many of the sort of 2 dozen, 3 dozen films that Netflix have now got on their service. But most people know Bandersnatch, I suppose, on the kind of general public. What was your, and you were into this before that. What were your kind of inspirations for coming from traditional film into interactive, and how would you describe the kind of structure and content of an interactive film, even if it's going out on game platforms and mobile and, you know, cinema? What are the kind of, how would you describe it to somebody who doesn't know what you're talking about?
Well, the first thing I would say, if they hadn't seen Bandersnatch, which many people have, but I would say, are they familiar with the Choose Your Own Adventure books? That, you know, people of a certain age grew up with, myself included, in the 90s, with where, you know, you'd be reading a book and you'd be reading a chapter. It could be a fantasy story, and you'd be the protagonist. They're usually told in the first person, and then you'd get to the bottom of a page, and then you'd have a choice, which would be, okay, you're walking through this haunted forest and you come across a cave. Option A, do you enter the cave? Option B, you keep walking. And then option A would be entering the cave, and it would say, okay, turn to page 53. And then if you want to take that, you turn to page 53 and then read on and make choices and see whether you lived or died or rescued the princess or what have you. Or you would then, you could take option B, which was keep walking, which would then be go to page 153, and then, you know, you would read on, and so on and so forth. So those were where I came from, and then I would ask sort of if people are familiar with that. This is what I do, is effectively the film version of those things. But also, you know, video games have been using choice-based mechanics for, you know, for many, for since you started. But, you know, the main inspirations for me were games like Until Dawn. If people are familiar with video games, story-based
Yeah.
games especially, Until Dawn. The Quarry is the most recent release in that field. Heavy Rain was another big inspiration to me in learning about choice-based mechanics and what makes a good choice-based story. As well as Late Shift, which was, you know, one of Wales Interactive's earliest
Yeah.
earliest pieces, was something I was very familiar with. So, you know, whether it was through literature or games or indeed films with Bandersnatch, those were the various different touch points I had at various stages of my life that have been, you know, led to the types of films that I'm making today on Stornaway.
And it's lit your, I mean, your passion was lit as you started to work on the complex. What are the things, I mean, and then you, like you said, you've worked in multiple genres.
Mm.
What is it? It's not a specific genre that floats your boat, and it's not a sort of specific theme. What are
Mm.
the things that really light you up about it and make you want to keep doing it?
I think it's just the you know, the any when you're learning to be a screenwriter or a storyteller in any way, I think it's kind of an extension of the basic principles that you're taught. So, for instance, as a screenwriter, you know, one of the first things you're taught is, you know, your protagonist always has to be making choices throughout the story, and you know, choices with stakes that alter the trajectory of their character and therefore the plot. And you know, and then basically, if that's the basic premise of linear storytelling, then that is also, by the same token, the basic premise of non-linear storytelling, because you are giving the agency of those choices to the viewer. So the fact that they come under the umbrella of, you know, choice being, and choice with stakes being, one of the key cornerstones of great storytelling, it felt like something that I think what hadn't been explored enough in the film world. And, you know, and it allowed me to, you know, not deviate away from the basic principles that I already had as a linear filmmaker. It was just expanding the possibilities of those principles, by, you know, empowering and giving the agency to the viewer, which I think most people, those things are going through their head whether they're watching a film alone or they're watching with a group of friends. Especially horror is a genre where it comes into. It's like, they hear a noise and the characters investigates the noise, and you're sitting there watching. Why are they doing that? So what would happen if you gave the viewer, okay, if you're so smart, here's the choice. Let's give them the choice: investigate the noise, or don't investigate the noise, or head off in another direction. So it's kind of, I think it's something that, subconsciously, us as viewers, we're always critiquing the choices that protagonists and characters are making in films, regardless of the genre, whether it is horror or rom-com or whatever it is. So I think, you know, just being able to empower the audience to make those choices and see what the cause and effect of those choices are was something that, you know, really excited me personally, and for how that could open up possibilities in filmic storytelling.
Yes, I think a lot of game writers, narrative designers, kind of that's those spark points for that, and you get to role play those different audience choices and like red team them, right? You get to figure out what they're going to do and then second
Yes,
guess them and either trick them
exactly.
or reward them. When
Exactly.
we that first screening of the gallery at the Phoenix in Finchley, where there were people floating with glow sticks, which was amazing fun. And Paul was in the projection box controlling what happened you know, when he saw how people were voting. And there were times where you would go against what people were voting for, and they knew what you were doing because they were all voting for one thing, and you went for the two people who were holding up a glow stick against it. And the sense of kind of, I don't know, the sense of, look, what you were saying about how audiences know that they are playing a game with, you know, with a story is, yeah, was great. It was fantastic. How was in you know, you've obviously, like, 5 dates and 10 dates have taken a very different path from the from horror, say. What's the, well, you've I know we talked before about the idea of high stakes.
Mm,
And Netflix have released their rom-com interactive film recently as well.
mhm.
What are the things about rom-coms that or about dating films, or about the idea of romance in interactive, that fit into how it works?
Well, I think that, yeah, it's a good question, and I think stakes, what are high stakes, are relative, depending on the genre that you're in. And I think one, you know, romance and love is a fairly universal genre, and attraction and dating and all those things. It's a fairly universal experience and genre that everybody is interested in and has their own opinions on and has their own viewpoints and their own preferences and so on and so forth. So, you know, it was, for me, I was looking at all these other genres and being like, okay, relative to the genre, how can we take high stakes decisions and incorporate them into a story? And what is
Yeah.
more high stakes in the choices that you make than a date, really? Because what more is a date than a series of, you know, mini decisions that you are constantly making, especially if you're talking to someone that you do like, or you know, you find attractive, and you know, you want to make a good impression. You know, those are inherently high. That places stakes on all the choices that you make. I mean, it fit like a glove almost, in a strange way. I mean, it wouldn't be the genre that jumps to mind when we were starting thinking about interactive. It was, you know, when you think of high stakes, you think of life and death. You think, so The Complex was it was a sci-fi thriller where, you know, the choices you were making resulted in your protagonist living or dying, or other characters living or dying. But by the same token, within the world of 5 dates and 10 dates, the protagonist that you are you know, you're embodying and making choices for, you know, that it's the stakes are highest because they want to find love, they want to find a partner, and whoever they're talking to. So it really fit like a glove. And you know, having seen people play it, and you know, how invested they get on it within not just the protagonist they're embodying, or you know, pursuing the suitor, the potential suitor that they are most attracted to, or they're most interested in. And is very you know, I've seen people more engaged with trying to win the heart of a certain suitor on 5 or 10 dates than almost sometimes in a life or death situation in The Complex or anything like that. So it was just kind of, yeah, as like going back to what I was saying before, it's it's for the same reason that people make, you know, that we film people make rom-com stories, and they tell rom-com stories, or they make horror stories, or they make it's by creating high stakes situations for their protagonists to make choices which affect the plot and mold them as characters, is exactly the same thought process that I go through as a non-linear interactive storyteller. It's just, you know, rather than all of those choices being down to me as a creator, it's a lot of it is that I hand over to the viewer to make at the same time. So yeah, that was the process in the rom-com development.
In gallery, you had multiple protagonists,
Mm.
which meant you had to film everything twice, once in 1983 and once in 2021. No, was it? Yes, 1981, 2021, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
And a female protagonist and a male protagonist. Well, the antagonist and protagonist swap roles
Mm.
with the same names but different, the different parts. What were and one female protagonist, one male protagonist? What were in like looking back on it? What were the differences in terms of how people related to it, and how did it change how people empathize with the characters? What was your observation of different audience reactions to being able to choose different protagonists? Because that seems
Yeah.
like quite a core thing in films, and yet in games you quite often get to change who your character or avatar is.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's where fundamentally the basic sort of premise came from. I guess I'm have been across gaming trends and gaming mechanics as well as film. Your filmic storytelling. You're always trying to look at both trends in both of those and see what you can explore and bring over to one side from the other. And the concept of choosing the gender of your protagonist was something that's been in gaming for a long time. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Assassin's Creed games, and and I always, I alternate each time I play between the male protagonist, and so I think on Mirage, the new one, if there is a female protagonist, I don't know. I actually haven't checked it out yet. I will be playing. It's my turn to play the female protagonist on my first playthrough. So it's been something that's been there a long time, and I think a lot of the time in games, I haven't really delved into why people sometimes the men will pick a female character or the women will pick a male character. But I guess a lot of it is escapism, the idea of adopting the avatar or making decisions for a character that is completely removed from your personal experience as a person. So I guess that was something that was really interesting to me to bring over into film, to give the audience the choice of, do you want to experience this story from a gender that you may relate to more, or one that is completely separate from your own gender identity, and how that would affect your perception of the character, especially with the gallery. It's a hostage thriller, so inherently there is a dynamic that's different with regards to level of threat or perceived threat, with regards to physicality and so on and so forth. Those kinds of things between when you flip the genders of a female hostage taker or a male hostage taker, and a male hostage or a female hostage in those situations. So that was something that it was just generally a choice that fed into the gaming mechanical conventions, but also thematically touched on things I wanted to explore within the hostage thriller subgenre, as well as the female story was told in 1981 and the male story was set in 2021. How that the change in era also affected the story, and the gender dynamics within the era that it was taking place. So there was quite a lot of different combinations of things going on about how the character was perceived in the different eras, and how the choices that the player would have made for the character might be affected differently whether they were a female or a male protagonist. So it was just those kinds of things I wanted to explore within doing that. Obviously, it makes it a bit more of a puzzle box in its structure, but I think it was one of the more interesting things that allowed people to experience the story twice in two completely different ways, and then compare and contrast why they made certain decisions, maybe as the male character compared to that they wouldn't have done to the female character, or vice versa, or how their perception of the situation and perceived stakes were altered by the two different protagonists. So yeah, there was two different. Yeah, there's a very practical, mechanical reason for doing it, but also a very strong thematic reason for doing it. And then it was just kind of a psychological, sociological, observational, process that I went through of seeing what the knock-on effect was.
It's great, and I mean, and with very different aesthetics as well. With a 1981 an aesthetic and an aspect ratio. I think that was true to 1981
Yes.
and for 2021 as well. Your partnership with your DP is very very talented DP, able to give you the aesthetic you need, and basically film two separate films within a 6-week period under COVID conditions, under COVID filming conditions.
Yeah.
And do it interactively, for 5 hours of finished content or something like that?
That's what it was. 5 hours of edited content from which you can play. Your decisions will coalesce into a 75-minute game film experience.
And for those people who are from a film background, Paul is his own AD.
I wasn't on the gallery, but I was on the latest.
Okay, right.
Yeah, we stripped it right. The latest one was very stripped back in terms of the crew size and everything. But it's potentially the most ambitious. I mean, Rue can testify, because you've seen on Stornaway the flowchart, the map of it. It's very interactively, it's possibly my most ambitious one yet. So it's very exciting.
We'll move on to talking about that. And instead of going into sort of workflow and all of the complexities of all of that, we've talked about that in the past. And we'll add links to other conversations where we've talked about how you write it and how you map it and how you control how you tame the octopus of because I think, a lot of people coming to it for the first time will always have that question of how does it not become this sort of infinite labyrinth and spiral. But you've kind of got an amazing creative and technical process for that. But coming to the new one, what I don't know how much you can say about it, but what have you learned both commercially and creatively over this period of all of these different projects you've worked on that have coalesced in this, and where is it going, and what's happening with it, and what's the production process of it been like?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll start creatively, because I guess it's an easier thing to answer, in that I think I think replayability is one of the most key aspects to these things. I mean, obviously you want to play something, you want to make something that people as a linear film, you want to make something that people will want to rewatch many times over the in a short space of time, or over the course of years, that they once a year they want to come back and watch, or so on. If it's on TV or something, they were like, oh, I like that, I'll watch it again. But I think that is even more pertinent in interactive films, and the fact that you are creating multiple different potential outcomes, or you're able to create branches where you won't see whole characters unless you make certain decisions, which is something that was very prominent in 5 and 10 dates, was that you had to play it more than once to see all the potential suitors, and then you had to play it more than once to get all the potential happy endings or bad endings with those suitors. That was a way that structurally allowed it to be very replayable and motivated people to replay it, because the whole premise was about exploring all these different personalities and different types of people that you could find different types of a different kind of potential romantic future with. So that was, I guess, would be the key principle I now always go into something when I'm writing it from the start, is to think about replayability and how you can weave that into your structure of the story that you want to tell. That how is the story going to almost hold back, huge elements that will keep an audience coming back and make them want to explore the full story that you built. I think that would be the first key thing to think about all the different things, whether they are different characters, different locations, different routes that your character could go. I mean, there was I can't remember for the life of me. There was a Star Wars game earlier, that came out, I think in the early 2000s, where your decisions either steered you into becoming a Jedi or steered you to becoming a Sith. So by definition, you could play it two completely different ways. So again, looping back to that, the replayability in not just other characters and locations and endings and storylines, but in the character that you are building, that is being molded through the story, the decisions that the moral and ethical decisions that you're making, how that, can you come back and play it and create 3 completely different characters by the choices that you make. So yeah, that would be the first kind of bedrock of how I creatively approach these things. And and what I've learned along the way is really good practice in creating a strong interactive narrative. Creatively, there is so many things that are logistical in how to make a story that doesn't just branch off into infinity and has some kind of central premise. And I guess a lot of it is dictated by the fact that I'm still an indie filmmaker working at very limited budgets. So
Right.
I know I have to make something that shoots in a certain time frame for a certain budget. So I guess the structure of that is just making sure that your if you think about your flowchart as a flowchart, that it doesn't just branch off into everywhere, that you are constantly almost bringing things back into a bottleneck, so to speak. Not necessarily one bottleneck, but you could have two separate bottlenecks that you're branching out and then coming into those two bottlenecks and then branching out again, just to make sure. Sorry?
Like sort of act points where
Exactly.
you've got
Yeah, exactly.
end of an act you're coming back to as some place, but you might be changed, but you're still sort of coming back to the same sort of gateway. Yeah.
Exactly. And coming from it from a film point of view, that helps keep some semblance of a 3-act structure or 4-act structure or 5-act structure that will be familiar to yourself as a storyteller, but also to an audience. And it just helps your story keeping some kind of structure within something that could be formless. Is very helpful for the quality of your story that you're telling, even if it is interactive and has infinite possibilities. It helps you doing that by keeping things in order in that sense. So I would say that's the biggest logistical creative thing that again, I could get into so many small little bits and pieces and tips of how to creatively film these things in a manageable way. But I guess moving on to commercially, which is the other thing you mentioned, that's the one I have less of an answer to, because it's such a new format and young format that things that were, and I've only been in it for 4 years, but it's like being in something where the language is constantly being rewritten. The more of interactive films that get made, where people's taste change, what people are looking for, and ultimately you're trying to make something, tell a story that appeals to two different markets, which are the game market and the film market, it does effectively eventually we'll get to a point where you can't please everybody, which is even in the game market you can't please everybody in the game market. In the film world you can't please everybody in the film world, let alone pleasing everybody in both those worlds at the same time. So I think that's just trying to make that's the balancing act that you're always trying to do, is that if you think about it as a spectrum where you've got film on one side and game on the other side, where on that spectrum you are, whether you are game of center or film of center. I mean, I always, because of my personal taste and where my skill set lies, and I always try and keep dead bang in the middle. But there are some amazing creatives out there like Sam Barlow, who I would say his work is probably game of center. But then there are also interactive film like Bandersnatch was potentially a little bit more film of center. There is no right answer. You can oscillate along that spectrum and tell the different stories, and that's what I think is so exciting about this format. In that there is no distinct way to make an interactive film. You can locate yourself on different places on that spectrum, and I like to hope that the more things that come out, they will be all along that spectrum, rather than people be told there is one way of doing it. But that's the thing, it's commercially the goalposts are always changing, and there are different trends and there are different things that people are interested in, and you just got to know, wherever you make a project, wherever it is on that spectrum, you just need to know who your audience is and who you're specifically targeting. Because if you make something that may be slightly film of center, but try and market it to the gaming audience, that may not work out so well for you, and vice versa. If you make something that is more on the gaming side of the spectrum and try and market it as an interactive film to a film audience, or take it to a cinema, and then it could leave the audience cold if it's too, if the game mechanics are too overwhelming for a casual film. If that makes sense. So those would be the different aspects that I've kind of learned, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning. By no means do I know everything, and I don't think I ever will, because it's all things are always moving and changing and shifting in the film and the game world.
Yeah, great. I mean, I feels like there's a lot to learn for everybody in every place. It feels like there's a lot of place to go with cinemas if they were open their hearts and their doors to the idea of having events where people could. I mean, it could be very easily done where people are getting involved in films. You know, everything from, you know, you've done live interactive screenings of the gallery of 5 dates and 10 dates, right?
I've just done 5 dates because 5 dates got nominated for a BAFTA Cymru, so we went and did a screening in Cardiff for it, which was with glow sticks and all. So yeah, I've done. That was the first time I did 5 dates as well.
Congratulations, that's great. Tell me about the BAFTA.
Yeah, so it was which is an amazing thing for BAFTA to recognize an interactive film and nominate 5 dates. In the feature slash television film category. So it was, it was a huge. Obviously, Bandersnatch won the TV film Emmy, which was, that was a huge, seminal moment for the interactive format.
Yeah,
But again, likewise for the independent interactive film format, this is, I feel like for BAFTA Cymru to, recognize an interactive film shoulder
yeah,
to shoulder with it with all the other traditional linear films is a really big win for the format as a whole. And I'm so honored and delighted that was one of mine they chose to nominate. So hopefully, fingers crossed that we're gonna win. The nomination alone is a massive win, but
yeah, it's amazing.
fingers crossed. Fingers crossed for the awards in a couple of weeks' time.
Well, and you'd hope that the platforms. I'm so interested in the Netflix. I don't know how much you can speak about this from your commercial point of view, I'll opine from the Stornaway point of view that I think it's frustrating that Netflix have kept their doors shut to their own Netflix Studios' own content. But they built this interactive engine that could have content from, Wales Interactive's amazing slate of content for people making things with Stornaway. Jack Attridge and Flavorworks have, Jack Attridge, who directed Erica at Flavorworks, has just gone to become creative director at Supermassive Games, who made Until Dawn, and these kind of brains and talents who are out there making things. And then there are these massive VOD platforms that potentially have this technology. Netflix does have technology and a game studio, and then Amazon and all of the other big platforms, Apple and so on. They all have the potential to be able to put quite easily, actually, interactivity within their platform that allows you to be able to switch between branching stories, and it could open up, your talent and these other directors. We should probably talk about some of the other people who are out there making things for Wales Interactive. Where we talked about Jack Attridge, and you mentioned Sam Barlow, whose Immortality is out on the Netflix gaming platform and Her Story and Telling Lies. He's made very acclaimed games, and then other studios making good Gate Films and John Giwam making other films at Wales Interactive, and Deveki and
Expedia, who
Ghost
just made
Dog,
the
and yeah,
Isleside Hotel, great Harry and
yes,
Grace.
amazing. Of course, Outside Hotel just out, which is sort of like a Twin Peaksy vibe to it. People are doing really creative
Mm.
things in all these different genres. I mean, you're spreading across different genres. Feels a bit like Rob Reiner going in the 1980s through every possible genre he can touch to try different things.
Yeah.
How much can you say about the genre? Have you mentioned it already? I'm not
I
sure if
haven't.
you
I can't. It hasn't been officially
no.
announced yet.
Okay.
But I could say that it is more in the survival thriller, but with a bit of a
Excellent.
twist. Definitely,
Yeah.
it's definitely it's a survival thriller at its core, but it touches on all sorts. It's quite a wacky, zany film. But I think it's a lot of it is about making choices to survive, and that I think people will have a lot of fun with it when it is announced and when it is released eventually.
Anybody who is been watching this and has their interests piqued by this, apart from signing up for Stornaway and having a play with our interactive storytelling tools, what advice would you give somebody who's thinking, I like games, I like films, maybe I can combine them and start out on this crazy journey? Because I know that people have been inspired by seeing our previous chats and obviously all of your amazing films.
Well, I hope so, and I would, you know, it's the cliche, but I would encourage them to just pick up any camera, and you know, you have them on this, which are, you know, especially if you're starting out, the phone cameras are, I mean, I didn't even have phone cameras when when I was a kid. So you know, or it was they were very very new when I was a kid. So
Yeah.
you know, no matter what your age, because of, you know, Stornaway, it's something that, again, this was not. I'm not saying this is something that has been around for a long time. This is Stornaway is something that's so new. I mean, we only started talking in 2021 about, what you guys have done to bring the ability to create an interactive narrative to the masses, the mainstream, the people. If they, all they need to do is just be able to log onto the internet, and they can and shoot something on an iPhone. They can drag and drop it. They can edit together in software, whether that is, you know, something as simple and free to access as iMovie if you've got Mac, or on DaVinci Resolve or something like that. They
Mm.
can shoot something on an iPhone, edit it together on some video software, and then, you know, sign up for a free Stornaway account to give it a go and make their first interactive narrative. It's every bit as accessible as making a linear film in that way. It's just Stornaway is that extra piece of the puzzle that was until a few years ago absent from people. So that's I would say I would give the exact same advice to people interested in this that I would give to people wanting to get into filmmaking. And it is now, because they are equally, you can just get up and shoot something and play around with it and experiment with, you know, a non-linear story, and making sure having your protagonist make various different choices and exploring the cause and effect from it, because it's every bit as accessible to you as making any kind of video content.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for the pitch for us. So that's really very happy about that.
Yeah.
I think, you know, yes, if you're an independent filmmaker or a student or somebody who is trying to come up with ideas without a budget to begin with, and you can sign up for a free account, but as you hit the limits, and just write to us and write to me, write to us and say, this is what you're up to, and you want to keep playing and exploring it, and we will be really happy to help you. And we have Adobe tools as well for opening up Stornaway inside Premiere Pro, and bringing and opening up Adobe. If you can't do any video editing, just opening up Adobe Express, their free web video editor, inside Stornaway to edit things together. And I think, you know, just play, basically,
Mm.
is the thing. And then hopefully those things we were talking about, those avenues for commercializing, will open up. What's you know, open up more and more. What when people want to find all of the films we've talked about, and we'll link to them, but where can they find what you've made, and how can they find you
Oh wow!
online?
So what I've made is, you can find it on the gaming, all major gaming platforms. So that's Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, or as apps on your phone. So we are also on the iOS Apple Store or the Google Play Store, and that is The Complex, was the first one I made, followed by 5 Dates, followed by 10 Dates, followed by The Gallery. And there's also Death Trap Dungeon: The Golden Room, which is a short. I think that's only available on Steam and Xbox.
Yeah, great,
And then the as yet unannounced upcoming project will be across those platforms as well, but hopefully playing at some film festivals, and hopefully some cinemas. And, you know, who knows? Hopefully somewhere else, you know, very accessible to anyone and everyone on the internet. So yeah, that's where you can catch my work. And then my socials are on Instagram and Twitter, now called X. It's at my name at Paul Raschid, PaulRaschid. And I have a website if you want to check it out, which is again my name, PaulRaschid.com.
amazing. Wow, very practiced, very good. I think the rest of your team that you regularly work with, and the, you know, producer, DP, editors, all those kind of things. Is there anybody else that you wanted to give a shout out to through the process of working with them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, my production company is with my dad, Neville Rashid. So I have to give a shout out to him. He's the
He's a
reason I'm
legend.
here doing what I'm doing. And then obviously, Good Game Media, John Guiwama, who's the producer there, Sarah Barker, who's head of production there, frequent collaborators of mine. Wales Interactive as well for constantly giving me the chance to and showcasing my work by publishing all of the stuff and co-developing. And as well, yeah, my team, Harry Stewart, who is the DP that I frequently work with, the gallery, the new one as well as he was on 5 Dates and was part of the Complex team. Chris Chow is an editor I've worked with on a good few of the projects that I've done. As well as Alex Oliver, who's been the editor on 5 and 10 Dates, and Alex Martin, who is the editor on my current one. Hannah Wing, who's my constant collaborator as a hair and makeup designer. Sylvia Belito, script supervisor, hugely important on interactive films.
Oh wow, yeah, what a job.
Yeah, Freya Murphy, costume design. Yeah, these are sort of like, there were more. Hopefully I haven't forgotten anybody, but it's just, yeah, and I think because it is its own kind of language, interactive filmmaking, being frequent collaborators who become au fait very quickly with the
Like a repertory company.
Exactly, yeah. The nuances of interactive film. It like I said, it's a slightly different language to linear filmmaking, and there are tricks of the trade that you need that that you will get with experience as you make them. I've been very lucky to have a core team of creatives that I love working with and who understand the ins and outs of it and are helping taking it to a new level each time I make one.
Yeah, the reason I thought about asking that is just because I was thinking about those people starting out by themselves. If they're thinking about writing this out, it just feels like always that like-minded collaborators are just massively important to getting projects, any film project, let alone something with scale off of the interactive scale off of the ground. Yeah,
Totally
great.
agree.
And actors and your amazing actors.
Oh yeah, how can I forget all the incredible actors that I've worked? George
you
Black,
put them through.
Anna Popplewell, George Blagden, Taheen Modak, who is the lead in 5 Dates, having everything. Charlie Ma, Rosie Day, who are the leads in 5 and 10, 10 in 10 Dates. Yeah, I mean, I could sit here. Michelle Milet, the lead in the Complex.
Sorry, I cut you off before you end up in the position of having to leave somebody out, but they have to bend their minds around lots of different reactions.
Absolutely, and keep a character that feels true to every decision that they make, even no matter how contrasting and paradoxical they may be to the other choice. The one choice may be completely altruistic and positive, and then another choice may be completely sociopathic, and they've got to be able to veer into both of those directions and explore the character going in different directions in their own personal journey. So that is a different language. So absolutely that actors need.
Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
It's been an absolute pleasure, as always.
Likewise. Thank you so much.